The Sue Gray saga continues as we found out that Boris Johnson believed from the beginning that the whole thing was a political stitch-up against him, and he called Sue Gray Psycho Sue.
Psycho Sue Gray would be part of it.
Hello everybody, welcome to the channel that challenges the mainstream media and the political establishment, from the left-wing nutters to the globalist elite. And today, psychos, apparently. Let's talk about Sue Gray. Before we start, tomorrow 10 a.m., I believe it's 10 a.m., is going to be a live stream right here on the channel. I'm going to go to the Reclaim Party's press conference. They have a surprise announcement with Lawrence Fox and special guests and everything else. So stay tuned tomorrow morning. It's going to be very important. And then we're going to have the state opening of Parliament. So we're going to get that going as well. But for now, let's talk about the clash between the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the former top civil servant Sue Gray, who always claims she was impartial and very, very professional. And then somehow she got a job with a political party. The Labour Party, and Keir Starmer's office as his chief of staff. And then, of course, there was an investigation into it. She is now banned from working for Keir Starmer and Labour for at least 2 years, which means the next election. Although, as I said previously, it doesn't really matter because she's friends with Keir Starmer. If the issue is that you can't work for the Labour Party because you might give them some sensitive information from the civil service of government, I'm pretty sure she could already do it because she doesn't have to officially work for them, and that's a big problem. But this is about GETTR who was a former advisor to Boris Johnson in Downing Street, and I believe he has actually worked for him before when he was London mayor. He has got a new project, and he's been doing the media rounds over the last day or two, and he basically said that the conversations around Sue Gray was happening from the beginning. Boris Johnson believed that the whole thing was a political stitch-up, but he couldn't say anything because it was controversial. And privately, he was calling Sue Gray Psycho Sue. Psycho Sue.
How did he, Boris, describe her to you?
One word maybe that will be recurring in it, Psycho Sue Gray, would be part of it. And there was a sense that she lacked perspective as to what he had done. There's a sense you'll get the words, but towards the end, I think he rightfully thought that there was no perspective and things were completely out of all proportion in the way, Partygate was viewed.
As we know, there is highly unlikely for Boris Johnson to return as party leader and prime minister. But knowing Boris and his history, you can never predict. You never know what's going to happen in the future. But it is kind of obvious that right now, at least for now, it's almost impossible for Boris to come back. So he's going rogue. He's basically revealing everything to his friends. Now, GETTR would say, well, this was just a private conversation. But he's friends with Boris Johnson. Clearly, they had a chat before he did all these media interviews. Boris probably told him to leak on his behalf and say, well, we got some private conversations. Anyway, just as a reminder, in terms of the timeline of what's been happening, back in last May, we had Sue Gray telling the Times that it's absolutely crap that she is a Labour person. Then she published the Partygate report. Then we got to October, November, when Sam White left and the Labour Party first approached Sue Gray, according to Doyle. So then you had last winter, where Sue Gray was included in ministerial discussions over Privileges Committee. Then Sue Gray received a report of the Harriet Harman meeting. Then in January, a few months ago, Sue Gray proposes sensitive £110,000 public appointment. So that was also a little bit weird, which we already reported. Then in March, 2 months ago, Sue Gray resigned from civil service and Keir Starmer tried to appoint her as his chief of staff. Then, of course, there were a lot of issues about the appointment of this Psycho Sue, allegedly. And so now she's banned. This happened, but at the same time, the whole discussion continues because it's not really just about Sue Gray. It's about the fact that this whole story has undermined, once again, the legitimacy and credibility of the UK civil service. The whole thing needs to change at this point. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter which party is in government because the faceless bureaucrats call the shots. So Boris Johnson also has said that he actually planned on sacking Rishi Sunak as Chancellor at the time if he had managed to have stayed on as Prime Minister. But Rishi Sunak beat him to it by resigning, which triggered the last trigger, essentially, for Boris Johnson to be forced to resign. We've already discussed all that, all the accusations that Rishi Sunak received at the time, that he was essentially stabbing his boss or former boss in the back, and nothing really happened because he eventually became Prime Minister, even though the members of the Tory party didn't vote for him. So that's the beauty of the political system in this country. Anyway, this is the latest update on Psycho Sue. Psycho Sue. We're going to come back. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, we're going to have the live stream with the press conference with the Reclaim Party. Big announcement coming up. We're going to come back in half an hour. We're going to talk to you guys about another former Prime Minister, Liz Truss. Subscribe to the channel. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.